Greetings everyone, Baldus here. In this video I'm going to highlight just how much potential Druid has, but to rest any of the doubt you have about playing Druid, and crush the rumours about it being Z DPS. After playing and theory crafting for days, I can see the potential it has, and it isn't just good for one build either. So let's start with the Pulverise build, probably one of the most satisfying skills to use in the game. The amount of legendaries that synergize with this ability is pretty crazy. Of course, you have the main one, which adds an additional shockwave, going up to 260% additional damage. This alone, in my opinion, is one of the most powerful in the game from what we have seen so far. The damage and clear speed just ramps so much when you get it. Equally important is this legendary, where we can convert Pulverise to an earth-based skill, which opens up about 3000 multipliers that we can scale from. We have all these skill passives on the tree: earth damage when fortified, earth damage against crowd control, and also these nature damage nodes. I think it's pretty clear to see the devs wanted us to use earth-based skills. Then we have the big Keystone passives. We could either take Ursine Strength for a flat damage buff, or even this spicy node, Earthen Might. It could have crazy potential. The chance is low to proc and it's yet to be tested, but if this can proc on every hit from an earth skill, it will be pretty overpowered. When paired with this legendary, which hits multiple times in an AoE, it should have a good uptime, resulting in a lot of damage. Then we have these other earth-based legendaries, this one providing crit damage against crowd-controlled enemies, and another that slows enemies that take earth damage. These two together almost guarantee the buff 100% of the time. One downside to this is that it won't be an effect against bosses, so they cannot be CC'd. However, against every other mob, it will. And if we know anything about Diablo Endgame, we are going to be running dungeons filled with mobs 99% of the time. There are also other legendaries, such as increased damage when fortified and damage when shielded, that are good additions too. But now let's talk a bit about Overpower and how it scales. We know we can get a guaranteed Overpower every 12 seconds with Pulverise. However, it does also have a chance of 3% at base. We have yet to see any gear with Overpower chance on it, but it could be something we can increase later on. Now here is something that's a bit juicy. If we take a look at Spirit Boons and what we have in the Snake row, there is this node called Obsidian Slam. This gives us a guaranteed Overpower every 10 kills. Now this is where you really start to see potential when running content like dungeons, where there is high density and tight spaces. Another great thing about Overpower damage is that it scales with every level you gain. Every time you level up, you just gain more damage because it scales off life, and then additionally Fortify scales up to your max life, adding more damage. As long as you can keep Fortify up, it's just free source of damage. Damage source that can scale with health is always strong, since you can gain damage while becoming tankier. Now finally, let's move on to Willpower, a great stat for Druid and Pulverise in particular, as it gives us increased Overpower damage and skill damage, 2 damage multipliers in one. If you have seen any of the Druid Paragon boards, it feels like they are really pushing Willpower pretty hard, and for a good reason. Obviously there is a lot more associated with Paragon boards and uniques, but I'll leave that to another video for now. So overall with Pulverise, I think it's going to be cracked at endgame, especially for open world content and dungeons where there's high mob density. I don't really understand why people think Druid is bad. Maybe at first glance it lacks compared to the other classes, but I honestly think it'll be one of the most powerful and fun classes to play. Now let me cover Landslide quickly, as I believe it will be another of Druid's strongest builds. Firstly, this legendary more than doubles the potential damage from Landslide, so it's an important one to have. And also, like Pulverise and Earth Scaling, it benefits from many of the same passives and legendaries we talked about. Landslide's strength really comes from its single target potential on bosses, but we really don't know how hard the endgame will be, and whether bosses will be a large form of content or not. If it is, a build that uses Landslide can be very powerful. Where Landslide gets its damage from is through Terra Mode charges and critical damage scaling. Terremote charges provide guaranteed critical strikes and 40% increased damage. Now for bosses, the chance to gain Terremote charges up to 10% chance when hit. As long as the tooltip is correct, this means any form of direct damage can add a charge. I don't believe dots would be classed as a hit, so I wouldn't include poison, for example. Now this is where Landslide gets to ramp, through a key passive here called Nature's Fury. When casting an Earth skill, trigger a Storm skill of the same category, and then vice versa when casting a Storm skill. Firstly, we can benefit from our generator. When we use Wind Shear, a Storm skill, we have a 20% chance to also trigger Earth Spike, giving us a bonus hit and more spirit generation. Then secondly, when casting Landslide, which is an Earth skill, we can trigger either Tornado or Lightning Storm. Both of these skills have multiple hits, and if we go back to how Terremote charges are gained on bosses, this will help massively to gaining those charges, resulting in a lot more damage. Even if bosses aren't a large part of the endgame, this synergy would still be very strong for clearing dungeons and probably very satisfying to play. I hope you guys gained something from this video and maybe increased your hype to play Druid, as I really think it's going to be a great class to play. The builds I highlighted here are just a few options. There is a great potential for almost all the skills. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.